All right, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you all for joining us for this afternoon's webinar for all parents on the topic of helping your child manage stress during COVID-19. So my name is Dr. Goh Chee Leong. I'm the CEO of the Prestigion K12 Education Group, and it's so wonderful to see all of you again. Thank you all for joining us this afternoon to talk about the topic that I think all of us as parents are concerned about, particularly during this very challenging year for our children. Right now, before I begin, I'd just like to acknowledge all of the partners who have worked together to put together our workshop for today. So first, we've got the different schools and centers under Prestigion. So that includes Sri KDU schools, Rail schools, Rail Kids, Cambridge English for Life. And along with the Prestigion K12 Education Group, we are also working today with Columbia Asia Hospitals. We are so happy to partner with them. We've been their partners for the last few months to also help us get ready for school reopening, as well as peterpatter.com.my, all right? And their website that provides some really excellent parent resources for new parents as well. So I'd like to welcome all of you, thank all of our partners for putting this event together. And let's make a start, So again, my name is Dr. Goh. My background is in the area of psychology. And today I'm here to share some thoughts and ideas about how we as parents can help our children manage stress, particularly during this COVID-19 period. Now, the way I've organized my session is that I've divided it into a couple of parts. So at the beginning, I'm going to say a few words about what stress is, understanding stress, and then I'm going to go into some of the ideas that I'm hoping will be useful and practical about, how we as a family can manage stress and some of the tips that we can teach our children in terms of managing stress. Now, I want to say before I begin that, this workshop really is, of course, designed for parents, but you will find that my approach is this, which is a lot of these tips are really relevant for us as adults as well. And, we always say that until we as parents are able to grasp and understand and apply the principles that we hope to teach our children, then, we will not be able to cascade that knowledge down to our family, right? And so I think today, see the ideas that I share from maybe two angles. From the first angle, how are these ideas something that I can apply myself as a parent? Because of course, as a parent, I lead by example. And if I'm able to manage stress better as a father or a mother, that's a really powerful example and role model to my children. I think number two, what are some of these ideas, how are some of these ideas things that I can translate to my children? And my children might be going through a difficult time now. Maybe they're a bit anxious about going back to school. They're a bit anxious about, the whole COVID-19 situation. So how are some of these ideas helpful to me as a parent in coaching and helping my child become better at managing stress? All right. So really two angles, helping myself, and then how do I help my child? And so let me just begin before I talk about some of the strategies for stress management. The first few slides, I want to spend some time defining stress because that's really important. I think the problem is that many times we find it difficult to manage stress because we don't really understand what stress is. And if we don't understand what is stress, what causes stress, then it's really difficult to I think, manage it. So this is a definition I've taken from sort of one of the old psychology textbooks I used to teach from. It defines stress as the psychological and physiological reaction to the perceived inability to cope. And there are two things that I want to pick out here. Number one, it's a normal, natural reaction. So it's your mind and your body reacting in a very natural way to the perceived inability to cope with something. And so when we talk about threatening events later on, I'll give you some examples. But in terms of an adult life, it could be everything, from work to financial problems to family problems to, our business is threatened by COVID-19. So when we as human beings are faced with a challenging situation, a problematic situation, basically stress is the term we use to in a sense, label how my mind and my body is reacting to this threat. And what's important here is that if you notice the term they use, it's not the inability to cope, it's the perceived inability to cope. So it's not so much whether in the end I'm able to solve the problem, but at that moment of time, do I believe that I can solve the problem? And so, what this definition I think underlines is the fact that, they say reality is in the eyes of the beholder, right? Which means that if in that moment my belief is, I cannot solve this problem, this is too difficult for me, I cannot, I cannot study for the exam, I cannot solve this problem at business, I cannot solve this problem, in my relationships. So when I'm feeling overwhelmed, that's when I get stressed. Now, to accompany this, there's actually a model. We call this the cognitive appraisal model. I find this one of the easiest to understand models when it comes to stress. And what this model basically says is that when we are faced with this challenging event, right, in our lives, we basically ask ourselves two questions, right? I mean, the term they use here is that we make two appraisals. We make a primary appraisal and then a secondary appraisal. So when we're faced with a stressor, now that's the term we use in psychology to define something that triggers stress, all right? So this is the problem or the challenge. So the first question we ask is this a threat to me? How big is this problem? Is this a big problem or a small problem? And so for example, there's a difference, right? I mean, if I've lost $50 from my wallet, that's not the same as I lost $2 million in the stock market. All right, I'm having an argument with my husband or wife. It's not the same thing as I'm getting a divorce from my husband or wife. I got my, one of your children, they've got their finger cut. That's different from them having a life-threatening disease. So I think the first appraisal, in a sense, determines how big this issue is. And of course, the bigger the issue, the more stressed you are, right? The smaller the issue is, the less stressed you are. But again, this is about perception. How do I perceive the problem? And that's why, for some of us who are a little bit jumpy, when we are redefining all problems as very, very big, we say in English, we make a mountain out of a molehill. That's no surprise then that we get stressed very, very, very often, frequently, because everything to us is an emergency, right? Everything is a crisis. Everything is a threat to me. And so again, that perception leads to frequent stress. Now, the second appraisal that we make is the question we ask is, do I have the resources to cope with this threat? Meaning, do I have, what I need to solve this problem? And so a typical example of this for a student, for example, is, the stressor maybe you've got an exam, all right? So some of our children, they're sitting maybe for SPM exams, for example, and we say, okay, look, so SPM, is this important? Is this a big issue? Yes, because we say it's an important exam. It may determine your future in terms of, your future career direction and education. So to the student, this is something that is really important. Now, do I have the resources to cope? Well, then that comes down to things like, do I have the time? How many days do I have to study? So of course, if you had 7 months to prepare for SPM, which I think is the case now, stress levels are probably going to be lower versus you've got 2 more weeks to study. So not enough days, too many chapters, not enough time to study. Then of course you get more stress. So the second appraisal in a sense cuts to the idea of, do you have what you need to solve the problem? So whether it's, do I feel I've got the intelligence? Do I have the materials? Do I have the workbooks? Do I have the expertise? Do I have the time, energy, to be able to deal with this particular situation? Now, I find this model to be useful because when you combine these two appraisals or your response to these two appraisals, it really then determines the level of stress we have, right? And so if it's a big problem to me, and if I don't have the resources, now that yes-no combination then leads us to, a fairly high level of stress, all right? And this cognitive appraisal model is useful as a model to understand why it is that sometimes we are stressed and in some situations we are not. Now let's move on to the next thing. And so I talked about stresses. Now, I think as adults, we know what our stresses are. For our children, of course, the stresses tend to be different. And depending on the age they are in, right? So younger children, it may just be, I'm scared of a particular teacher that is very fierce. I don't have time to do my homework. I've got bullies in the school. I've got examinations. So of course, the older they get, the problems and the nature of their challenges tend to change, right? I've got examinations coming up, parent expectations, so let's be honest, oftentimes we may be the source of the stress for our students. So we may be the ones stressing out our students because our expectations are very, very high, right? It may be issues with acceptance from friends, so particularly with teenagers, this is really important. I don't have friends, I feel lonely, my friends don't accept me, I'm having a fight with my friend, boyfriend, girlfriend, best friend. It may be self-identity. So self-esteem issues, I don't feel good about myself. And certainly again with the teenage years, that issue of personal worth, self-esteem, value, personal attractiveness. Do I feel that I'm an attractive person, I'm a worthy person, people want to connect with me or not? These are things that certainly are very important at that age, all right? And then also other things like socially awkward situations. Don't ever underestimate, even for adults, the stress of embarrassment. Even as adults, we know many adults who, until our 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, we are so worried about what other people think, right? We are so stressed out about a social situation where we think we might be ashamed or embarrassed, we've forgotten something, and this is the same for children as well. I'm sure, during this lockdown period, many of your children who have been, involved in online education have this experience where they are there and, the Wi-Fi suddenly doesn't work. They're halfway through a Zoom classroom and, the Wi-Fi cuts off and there's a major panic, stress levels rocket, mom, dad, mommy, papa, I don't know what to do. The Zoom is not on and my teacher is going to scold me. My friends are going to laugh at me. How do I get onto the computer again? So I just want to say, the point I'm making is that for an adult, this might be, this is such a small problem. Why are you stressing out about this? But you've got to appreciate that I think at different different stages of life, what is important and not important is very different. And so as adults, it's very common and I think easy for us to sort of brush it off and say, come on, these things on the list here is nothing. This is, small problems compared to what we as adults are experiencing. We are going through major issues like businesses struggling, workplace issues, KPIs, performance targets, financial issues, keeping the family afloat, during this COVID-19 period. And I think the temptation is that we can downplay and not appreciate that, these things that our children are going through really are major issues to them, and it may be nothing for us, but to them, this is a really big deal, So I think one of my tips, in terms of helping children manage stress is don't underplay it. It's not about, saying, look, this is a nonsense problem, don't worry about it. Because for them, at that moment, this is a huge issue. Not completing the homework and they're scared of the teacher scolding them. That's the major crisis that they're having right now. Or like I say, their best friend not, calling them back or not texting them back. That's the end of the world for them. And I think at the beginning to connect with our children, it's not about saying, this is a nonsense problem, but it's more about learning to empathize with them and say, okay, look, I know you're upset by this. This is important to you. So let's help you manage that and manage the stress to do with that, rather than say, don't be silly, don't stress out about this. Because look, when we look back at when we were young, there were a lot of things that we now regard as ridiculous that certainly worried us when we were younger. All right. Now I want to add another slide to this because, of course, these issues in this slide are things that we experience, our children experience in a normal existence, a normal life. But then you add COVID-19 and we realize that this year is not ordinary, right? This year is an extraordinary year, incredibly challenging, very disruptive. The whole world has changed because of COVID-19. And so, you see that there are certain elements here that causes stress levels to be even higher than usual. So firstly, there's an element of change. And psychologists will tell you that any kind of change in life will cause some rise in stress levels, whether it's even positive or negative change. I remember, we were looking at research, divorce or separation in a marriage will obviously cause stress. But look, even getting married also is stressful. So whether it's negative or positive, a death in the family obviously is very, very stressful and painful. But even a birth in the family, in addition to the family, of course, it's a different kind of stress and challenge. I'm not saying the same, the two things are the same, but I'm just saying any kind of change, changing house, changing job, changing country, moving from primary school to secondary school, changing schools, any kind of adaptation that is needed, stress levels will go up a little bit. Now, I'm not saying this is a bad thing, because, in a VUCA world, right, in the fourth industrial revolution world, one of the things I've argued is that that's why children need resilience, right? They need these skills to manage stress because change is unavoidable. And I think, as we've seen in this year, it's not as though we have purposely changed things, but COVID-19 has changed the world for us, right? So there's an element of change. So anytime there's change, human beings need to adjust. We take time to adjust. Stress levels go up. Whenever there's uncertainty, so of course, COVID also presents this sense of uncertainty. What's going to happen next? How long is the lockdown going to last? Is there going to be a second wave? So even now, right, the whole wide world, including Malaysia, things are much better in Malaysia now, but all of us are still worried. Is there a second wave? Is schools going to remain open? Will they close again? What's going to happen next? When is the vaccine coming? Is it next year? Is it this year? So that uncertainty, also stress levels rise, because we're not able to predict what's happening next. There's also an element of helplessness, right? Meaning that we don't feel in control of the environment. And I think COVID-19 certainly sums this up, where, there's so many things about COVID-19 we can't control. We can't control the fact there was COVID-19. You can't control the fact that there's a lockdown, the fact that businesses are closed. For 3-4 months, we couldn't go out. Schools were not open, so all of these things. Now even when we come back to schools or work, social distancing, you can't go and hug your classmates. And so, children miss that, but there's this sense of helplessness that they can't do anything about it, and helplessness, this sense of powerlessness, certainly it leads to also higher stress levels. Also, there's an element of physical threat, right? Now, COVID-19 is a pandemic. I know now, we sort of normalize it, and maybe people are not so stressed now when they were. But remember in February, March, all of us remember when, the pandemic was spreading and everybody was sort of panicking because we were worried about our own families, right? About our own health. Could we get COVID-19? What about our elderly parents? What about our children, our families, people we love? So that certainly, of course, increases stress levels when we are worried, concerned, under threat. Plus, I think for many children, what compounds all of these stresses is the fact that they've also been removed from their social support environment, meaning, they are not face-to-face with friends, right? For 3-4 months, they were not able to have their gang around, their friends around, their social support network, and normally the friends are the ones that sort of help them manage stress. But, in a COVID crisis, everybody's locked down. And so that made things even more challenging. Now, of course, people were on Zoom, we live in a telecommunications digital era where, kids can, still be in touch with their friends, FaceTime, Zoom, phone calls every day. But, it's not the same, right? Physical contact, being together, there's a certain power about that kind of love and support. So that's been taken away as well, right? So when you put all of these 5 things together, then you realize that this year, on top of the usual stresses that our kids are going through, this year is particularly bad, right? And I think that's why we're having this workshop today, right? So I asked this question, something for all of us to have a quick think about. But is stress necessarily a bad thing? Right? And look, I guess the other question attached to this is it possible to have a stress-free existence, right? Is it possible not to have any stress at all? And is that a good thing? And I guess my answer is no, it's not possible. Nobody in this world, has gone through their whole human life without feeling any stress. And I don't think it's possible not to have stress, we used to joke that the only people who are not stressed are dead people or people who don't care, because I would say in answer to this question, stress is not necessarily a bad thing. And it's certainly not a sign of weakness, And so we need to sort of, I think, remove some of the taboos and the misunderstandings we have about stress. So some people used to say, well, only weak people get stressed. Only people who can't manage their life, people who are not intelligent, people who don't know how to manage their work, these are the people who get stressed. And people who are strong, capable, competent, we don't get stressed at all. And that's nonsense, you talk to anybody who is strong, competent in leadership roles, highly successful people. You talk to any one of them, nobody is going to come back and tell you they've never felt stress in their life. Of course, all of us feel stress. In fact, we feel stress because we care. And so often in workshops, I've said I wear stress as a badge of honor. I'm not afraid to admit I mean, this is the psychologist who is giving stress management workshops to say, I'm very, fine, honest and open about the fact that I get stressed all the time. And in fact, I'm proud of the fact I get stressed, because stress means that I actually care. When you get stressed about work, means you care about work. You're serious about work. I'm serious about students. I'm serious about education. So that's why I get stressed about our schools and centers, because I want them to do, to be the best. All right. I get stressed about my family because I love my family. So that's a good thing, right? That's a very healthy, natural thing. I mean, if you didn't love your family, then of course you're not stressed out about anything. Your children's health, husband or wife, your parents, but the fact that we love them and these people mean a lot to us, of course, then you get stressed when they get sick, when they get hurt, when they're going through difficulties. So I just want to say, stress is not a bad word. It's not a bad thing. It's a very natural part of human existence, and we need to get rid of this notion that stress is this, horrible, terrible thing. Now, having said that, all right, you look at this chart. The idea here is that, of course, too much stress is bad. So just like most things, now this chart I've sort of taken, inspired by the Yerkes Dodson, and these were two researchers that found, at the turn of the century, in 1905, 1908, they discovered a relationship between arousal levels, so emotional arousal levels and performance in anything, in studies, in sports, in work. And what they found was interesting, which was that medium levels of arousal, now in this case, of course, I'm applying it to stress in particular, medium levels of stress actually leads to the best performance. Now, this applies, I should say, usually to difficult and challenging tasks, right? So this doesn't apply to very simple tasks, but to difficult tasks, like taking an exam, like doing a proposal in front of your board, like, playing badminton on the Olympics, it's something that requires a lot of focus, attention, very challenging, then this chart actually makes sense. It's proven by research, So medium levels of stress, good. Low levels of stress, bad. High levels of stress, bad. So I call this sort of the Goldilocks principle, right? Not too hot, not too cold, just right. Not too high, not too low, So in this case, we say, medium levels of stress are good. So it's actually bad when you have no stress. People with no stress means, you're sort of super relaxed, too relaxed, to the point of you don't care anymore, tidak apa attitude, and that's where you start making mistakes, because you're not concentrating, you're not focused, you're not sort of, enough on edge, not on your toes. So we know in sports this happens, right? When you go in and you're overconfident, and I'm a sort of the number one player in the world, and I'm playing against the number 1,000 player, and I'm thinking, this is going to be so easy, I don't even need to try. And that's when you actually lose the match, right? That's when, that's when the upset happens, because the players are not focused, they're overconfident. So no stress is bad, and that's why when we talk about stress management, this diagram sort of sums it up. The goal behind this is not to get rid of stress, right? So the goal behind this is not to say, look, let's get rid of stress completely. The goal is to say, how do I move stress levels to the middle? Now, of course, today's workshop is really, I'm going to give you ideas later on how to move stress from high to medium, right? Not so much from low to high. I think, parents, we're quite good at doing that anyway. Most of us are sort of experts at, stressing out our kids. So I don't think I need to give a workshop about that. But I think it's more today about, if you find that your children during this COVID-19 period, but just generally in life, are getting stressed, they're having trouble coping with the stress, then this is a good life skill to teach them. How do they manage their stress levels? So from high, they push it down to medium, and that's optimum level. So all of us need some stress. Like I say, it's a good thing. It's something that I'm proud of. I'm proud to have, because it means that I actually care about life. I embrace life. But how do you manage that? So the other analogy that I use is stress is like fire, right? Human history with fire. The moment human beings could control fire, that was a breakthrough, a tipping point in history. And it's a bit like that with stress. Stress can kill you. If it's out of control, it can consume your whole life and kill you, give you heart attacks, all kinds of things. Horrible things happen. You lose your temper, you engage in destructive behavior. I've seen thousands of lives destroyed because they can't manage stress. Marriages have ended, work, careers have gone down the drain because they just can't manage all of this stress and anxiety that they have. So it's about like fire, how do you manage it, keep it controlled so that it actually works in our favor? And it's such a powerful weapon. all right, to keep us motivated and on our toes. Now, with that in mind, for the rest of the session, I'm going to be spending time giving you some quick ideas, all right, on how to manage stress. And I've divided my ideas into two bits. So part one is what I call resilience strategies. So how do you build up resilience? These are things that you do before you are going through any crisis or stress in your life. These are, I would say, more life habits, thought habits, work habits, that we should be building into our life at any given point of time, so that they prepare us. So when we are going through really challenging periods like COVID-19, we are ready. We've got the resources, the life resources to cope with that level of pressure and work, all right? So those are resilience strategies. How do we build up that strength, all right? Part two is going to be what I call responsive strategies. So these are things that we can do. If right now, for example, it's too late to prevent stress, you already are high stress levels right now, then responsive strategies are what can you do? And I'm going to give you a quick, 6-step model on how do you manage stress in a way that, ends up, so that things turn out well and you don't end up, sort of self-destructing, right? So two parts of this. Now I'm going to go quite quickly. The notes will be available online, all right? So you can download it from our Facebook pages and websites. But, I'm going to go quite quickly because we've got a lot to cover. And if there are any questions, you can ask me a bit later. So let's start first with resilience strategies. So like I say, the analogy here is, look, how do you conquer Mount Everest? Well, Mount Everest is not going to come to you. Mount Everest is going to remain the challenge that is. To conquer Everest, I need to become stronger, right? So I need to train myself out. I need to build, that strength, that stamina, that those skill sets, to be worthy of Everest. And I guess to me, that's resilience. That's a good analogy, that resilience is not about avoiding problems in your life, because I think what we teach our children is to say, look, life is going to be difficult and challenging. It's not just this year with COVID-19, in this VUCA world, right? And fourth industrial revolution world. You need to be prepared for a lot of uncertainty, a lot of challenges, a lot of changes, and because of that, so what Papa and Mommy are telling you is not so much, let us teach you how to avoid, any kind of challenge in your life, because that's impossible. You want to achieve anything in your life, in your studies, in your work, in your relationships, you're going to have to go through challenges. And so the strategy is not avoidance. The strategy is, how do you make yourself stronger? How do you become stronger as a person, emotionally included, so that you've got the resilience to take on these challenges without being afraid, okay? So if life can't be easier, we need to become stronger, right? So there are 6 keys I want to share with you, how to build resilience. The first is building a clear sense of direction. And this is something that I learned, probably about the time I was 13, 14, and I really started doing this seriously just before university. And it's a life habit I do now, which is every 6 months, you need personal reflection. You need to take half a day, 1 day, for those of you in crisis, maybe even 2 days off on the Saturday, Sunday weekend, and just be alone, away from the handphones, emails, to just spend time by yourself thinking. So personal reflection is about reflection, thinking, thinking about life, thinking about where you are and where you need to be, right? And oftentimes I think the problem with this is that we are just so busy, and it's made worse by, I guess, this, this age of technology where, technology is a good thing. So it's not technology's fault. It's just that our application of it is, many of us don't have the discipline to put it aside, right? And so when we're surrounded by technology and emails and, TV and, computers and games and all that all the time, there's no space to actually be quiet and to think. So I'm a big fan of quiet and solitude, and you need that, especially as you're growing older. And this is a skill that we can teach our children. This is not something you need to wait until, they are 30, 40 years old or working adults. As I think early as 12 or 13, it's a good practice. And of course, look, it doesn't need to be some profound thing. It's just simple, 3-4 hours, be by yourself, and it's thinking, what do you want from life? So some of the questions we ask is where you are, what do you want, so the next 3 months, 6 months, so for a 12, 13-year-old, it's very simple. Let's just plan, next 6 months, what's happening, take out your calendar, timetable, what are the challenges you're going to be facing, what are the things you want in your life, what are the things that will give you happiness, what are the things in your life that you think you need to improve, fix, your personal health, your habits, friendships, are you happy with your friendship? So it's really an evaluation, it's a reflection, it's an audit, right, of your life. It's being introspective enough to ask ourselves, what's happening with my life? and in a sense doing a self-examination now, right? And I'm just saying, I mean, don't underestimate even young children's ability to do this. So I would say from the time of about 12, 13, it's probably old enough to start this habit with your kids. And certainly as adults, we should also do this. All right. So stop one day, half a day, just to think about where I am, where do I want to go, what are things in my life I'm happy with, not happy with, what do I want to adjust and change. All right. And I think in particular, the most important thing to me is it's coming up with the clarity of what do I want in life. Right? And I think to me, a lot of people are lost, a lot of children and adults. The reason why we are so stressed, we are so caught up in problems and negativity, and we're so anxious about everything is because, there's a missing piece there in our life, which is that we don't know what we want, that there is no sense of purpose, no sense of a goal, no sense of what makes me happy. And I think this lack of, clarity about what do I really want, what really makes me happy. I think that emptiness and that void often can be filled with a lot of anxiety and negative thoughts. That's where we go to really dark places in our mind, and start thinking about all the horrible things that can happen to us. And then we become worriers, right? Stress levels overwhelm us. So I think it's about, I'm not saying that life is not going to be worry-free. I've said stress is a natural thing, but it's about, I think, in filling that in the context of, look, I know what I want. And you know what? I mean, I know what I want in my life. I know what I want for myself, for my family, and for my career. And because I've got this clear sense of what I want and what makes me happy and what gives me meaning and purpose. It's true, I will have problems. Yes, I will have challenges. But the challenges then don't overwhelm me, you see. They don't define my life. They don't define everything about my existence, and I don't allow it to then dominate my thoughts and my thinking. So this simple question, but it's a really important question to start getting our children to think. And short term, I mean, I'm not asking them to ask, you can't, a 12-year-old is not going to, be able to answer what do they want in their whole life, So I mean, maybe very simple to say, what do you want to do this weekend? Just be clear about the more immediate, today, this week, this month, this year, so setting goals, maybe more short term, rather than 50 years, 60 years. I mean, even adults can't do that often. So I think start small, but it's just the habit and the practice of getting children to be clear about what do I really want? What makes me happy? What gives me joy and purpose? All right. Okay. And I've got a great story about this. I always tell this story. I mean, I was doing, this was about 15, 16 years ago when I was doing research in the insurance business, because I was brought in by one of the largest insurance providers to do research on their top sales agents and what makes them tick and what are some of the features of, these super motivated agents. And I interviewed a whole bunch of them, about, I think 50, 60 of them. Over a 2-month period, I spent time with them. I talked to them. I went to them on sales calls. And there was one particular young man that I really admire. And this young Indian gentleman was about 22 at that time and had been working in insurance for about 3-4 years. And when I asked him what his goals were, this young man said, with almost tears in his eyes, he says, look, I come from a family with a single mother. My mother, my father left when we were very young. My mother, raised me and my brother, and it's an amazing story because she was sort of like a washing lady, right? And cleaning lady in offices, and she put 2 of them through sort of their schooling and looked after them, but they never owned a house, so they were in a squatter area, never had any land title, and any ownership. And so he says, look, I've been working, I've been saving up secretly. I have not told my mother, but I'm saving up secretly for the down payment on a new house for her. And that's my goal. That's why for 3 years, I've been working non-stop, saving up money in insurance, from early morning, 7 a.m. to midnight. I'm making sales calls. Every day I'm motivated because, in my mind, I can imagine the day when I surprise her and I bring her up to this house and I give her the keys and I say, Mommy, thank you so much for everything. I love you so much. This is your house. and you don't need to ever worry about, where you're living in, I'm going to look after you. And I mean, I'm listening to this young man now. That's clarity, man. He's clear about this question. What does he really want in his life? What is his goals in life, So to him, is he stressed? Yes, of course. I mean, does he get stressed? Yes. But does the stress overwhelm him? Prevent him from doing his work? Prevent him from making call after call, even though he may get rejected time and time again? I mean, does it deter him? No. The stress doesn't paralyze him, because you see, he's got this goal. And his mind is focused on the goal, not on what he's worried about, you see. Not on the problems in life. He's focused on the goal. So because he's got this clarity of purpose, he's able to manage his stress, right? And I think that's a wonderful story. And the good news, I mean, this happened about 15, 16 years ago. Good news is a year later, he saved up, he did it. Send me a photograph, It's a beautiful story, and I've got full admiration for that young man and the discipline he had and the love he had for his family, all right? Okay, key number 2 in building resilience, build healthy time management habits. Now, this one I think we all know, because we all, I think, struggle with this, and particularly young children, teenagers, our children, I mean, they're still coming to groups. How do you manage time? And I think this is the classic case of when we don't manage time well, then we get stressed. So this is something called the Eisenhower decision matrix, right? It breaks down all of our life activities into 4 parts of, this matrix. So you can see it's broken up into important, non-important, urgent, not urgent, right? So you've got, 4 quadrants of this matrix. And they say, well, okay, firstly, number 1, you need to distinguish between what is important and not important. And not important means these are things that have no value add on your life, right? These are things that you shouldn't waste time doing, because they are time wasters. They don't add value. They don't add, health or wellness or happiness or, any worth to you or your family or anybody else. So, I mean, so not important things, we need to learn to cut out these time wasters, right? But that's sort of another workshop. You go to any time management workshop, they'll teach you that, how to cut out time wasters. But I want to focus on things that are important, right? So these are things that we should be doing. But then you break them into urgent, not urgent. And really the quadrant that is key here, that is relevant to stress, is the quadrant that is important, not urgent. So these are things that we know we should be doing. And we need to do it at some point, but we don't need to do it now. So it's not urgent, it's not something that, there's a deadline to it right now. We can delay it to next year, next month, that kind of thing. So I mean, for our children, schoolwork is a classic example of this, right? The teacher gives an assignment on Monday 1 week before. And we all know what happens, the kids, most children, right? I'm not saying all, but most children will wait. They're not going to do it on Monday, Tuesday itself. They're going to wait until like Sunday night, isn't it? Then freak out about it. And then, of course, everybody gets stressed, and they stress out everybody in the house, because suddenly at 9 p.m. on Sunday, they remember, oops, I forgot I've got to write this 5-page essay by, 7 a.m. tomorrow. So, everybody sort of isn't, and this happens all the time. Exams as well, isn't it? So I mean, SPM 7 months away, lots of time. Important, not urgent. But then 7 months becomes 5 months, becomes 3 months, becomes 2 months, and then the stress level starts going up, right? Now, having said that, look, we shouldn't point out the finger at the children, because we are no better. Adults also are terrible at this, But we think about things. Often what gets done are things that are urgent, right? Things that the boss is demanding today, tomorrow. Then we do it, because there's no more time, right? But a lot of things, if you think even about our own businesses, our own work, a lot of things that are important, not urgent, they get pushed back. So for example, I spend a lot of time with organizations and corporations, doing consulting and training in this area. And of course, as a leader myself, I see this, So things like succession planning, talent management, long-term planning for the next 4 or 5 years cycle. So unless the company is demanding it, we don't do it. We do what is urgent, our monthly deadlines, but things like succession planning, long-term planning, next year stuff, all of this stuff we sort of put in the back burner. And of course, eventually what happens is it becomes urgent, right? So all of these things, if we procrastinate, we know what's going to happen, right? So the not urgent homework at some point is going to become urgent because it's due tomorrow. The not urgent exam suddenly becomes urgent because suddenly the exam is 2 weeks away. Same thing for adults, right? So we always say exercise is important, but not urgent. I mean, it's sort of number one New Year's resolution every year, right? It's a sort of the standing joke with us, must jog, must go to the gym, must diet, and, that's December 31st. By, January 5th, most of us have thrown that, New Year resolution out of window, because we can't keep it. So, I mean, we push it. But my point is, then, when we are about to have the bypass and the doctor is having the medical check and saying, hey, look, you're 1 inch away from a heart attack, you better start exercising now. Then suddenly everything becomes urgent, right? So I think as human beings, we are a funny species. I mean, we do things when we have to. We wait until it's crisis time and then we do it. And look, what is this all got to do with stress? Well, when our whole life is important and urgent, because for every part of our life, our work, our schoolwork, our homework, our relationships, our friendships, our personal health, everything we delay until the last minute, well, then it's no surprise that we are stressed all the time, right? High levels of stress. And I would say in some regard, these things are unnecessary stress. So these are stress that we've invited into ourselves because, we've sort of waited until the last minute. So this is a very simple principle using this Eisenhower decision matrix to illustrate. So what should we do? Which box should we focus on? Important, not urgent. That's the key box. And it's a good practice every month, every 3 months, every few weeks to then make a list to say, okay, what are things that are right now important to do but not urgent? And I write that down, and then the exercise is always put it in your diary so that even though it's not urgent yet, what do you need to do over the next 2 weeks to finish it off? Because you don't wait, the moment you wait, game over, right? Okay. All right. Number 3, building thought management skills. Now, this is about thinking, perception. Remember earlier I said that, the cognitive appraisal model of stress, right? Why do we get stressed? Because it's about how our mind interprets a situation. How big is this a threat to me? Do I have the resources to cope with this threat? Those two questions, in a sense, determine whether stress levels are high or low. And so in that sense, I mean, the logic of it is that how you think about life, about problems, about yourself, about resources, that's going to have a direct determination on what your stress levels are. And that explains why you can have 2 people in the same situation. You can have 2 students taking the same exam tomorrow, and one is like cool as a cucumber and the other one is stressed out of their mind. And that explains why, because I mean, same situation, same problem, but it's a perception issue. Okay. So cognitive reframing is about how do we rethink, change our perspective. All right. And I would say, I mean, this is in some ways related also to the what I think is a great practice of things like mindfulness and contentment, and something very, very interesting. So I give you some examples. I mean, we always say, well, don't look life as a problem, look at life as a challenge. There's this quote by mountain climbers, right? When you look at a mountain, you see a barrier, something that is negative. But when I look at a mountain, I see an opportunity to challenge myself. I mean, so simple thing. I mean, I let me start with an adult example, and then with a child's example, which is, I mean, adult example, I always tell young leaders who are moving up, rising up in the organization, and they encounter challenges, and of course, they get stressed, they get discouraged, some of them get overwhelmed, and I say, look, I mean, rather than seeing this difficult project, this difficult KPI, this difficult group or team or department that you're working with as this problem and something negative, you see this as an opportunity to grow, Because, I mean, put it this way, I mean, if you want to be the CEO, so you want to, be in my position, in my chair in 5-6 years' time, then you're going to have to learn to do all of these things. I mean, if you can't handle 2 difficult staff in your department, how are you going to handle 500 when you're a CEO? You can't handle a $5,000 KPI or target. How are you going to handle a $50 million KPI? Or financial target. So I think the idea is we say, look, this is a good example. This is a good chance. You should be so thankful that you've got this challenge, this opportunity to sort of stretch yourself, learn a new skill, right? Because inevitably, I mean, there will be a way around it. You do know that, right? I mean, most of these problems, they sound scary at the beginning, but when you overcome them, you will find some way to overcome it. In most cases, you will find a way around it, and you grow from that experience. So I mean, I think the mountain climbers perspective here is to say, a mountain is not a nuisance to them. When they are mountain climbing, they're not going, this stupid mountain climb, why do I have to climb down? No, I mean, they are going, I'm a mountain climber. The tougher the mountain is, like Mount Everest, the steeper it is, the more challenging it is, the better, because that makes it fun. I mean, it's the same reason why Liverpool is not going to come to Malaysia to play Malaysian Cup football. I mean, with all due respect to Malaysian football, because Liverpool, they want to play against the best players in the Premier League, in the European League, So even if I offer them billions of dollars, they are not going to come here because they want the challenge, you see. So they are seeking the challenge. They are seeking, the more difficult to them, the better. They want to play against the best, even though they know that's going to be difficult and stressful. But they welcome that, because that's the purpose of sports, of games, to push yourself. So I think, sometimes to our own children, we need to encourage that spirit, to say, hey, look, life is not about choosing the easiest way. It's not about, where's the fun in that, I mean, whether it's sports, whether it's studies, whether it's work, whether it's challenges, anything in life, it's about, even things like music and performing arts, it's about stretching yourself, So in drama, you do want to take on that difficult Shakespearean role. The more difficult the role is, the actors, you love it, because that's the challenge. That's why you became an actor for. You want a challenging role. You don't want an easy role. A musician, you want the difficult song, right? I mean, a guitarist, you want that, crazy, guitar solo and takes you 6 months to learn it. That's the whole satisfaction behind it. So I think sometimes they need this kind of more gung-ho attitude about, hey, look, when you're facing a difficulty, rather than seeing it as, this is so terrible and discouraging, see it as your eyes should actually, light up and go, hey, look, this is an interesting opportunity. And it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be plain sailing. There are going to be good days and bad days. So we're not saying it's going to be, a bed of roses, but the difficulty, we say no pain, no gain, right? The challenge and the struggle, that's part of the glory. And so sometimes I think as parents, we forget to instill this in our children. And of course, they need to see it in us as well, So when we come back from work and our attitude sometimes also they model. So I mean, if we are moaning and groaning and work is so difficult and this and that and complain about everything in life, it's no surprise that then they also take a very negative view to life. So of course, they also get stressed about everything because the parents seem to be stressed about everything. Now, I'm not saying, we don't be honest, I'm not saying that, but I think we also need to sometimes check our own view and perspective of life. And if we are being negative all the time, then, why would I expect my children to be different, right? So they need to see, I think, a more balanced and healthy perspective, right? I like this. Helen Keller, I learned this quote probably when I was about 13, So again, it's not too young, I think as a 13-year-old, I learned this and I taught this, and even as a student leader, I shared this with my fellow students because I thought this really captures the point I'm just making about perspective in life. So Helen Keller, she became blind and deaf at a very young age. If there was anybody that had a right to complain and moan or groan about life, it would be her. But that spirit of hers, for somebody to go through all of that hardship and be able to have a quote like this, life is a daring adventure or nothing at all. It speaks volumes about the kind of person she was, right? Positive energy she had. All right, so I think this is this quote encapsulates the kind of life perspective we want our children to have, to say, hey, look, I'm not belittling the challenges you're facing. I'm not laughing at the fact that you're having a difficult time in school or you're stressed about exams. We are not doing that. I said that earlier already. We're not putting it down, but we're saying, look, I know it's a challenge. I know you're scared. I know you find it difficult, but I'm just here to say that these are the things that make us, these are the things that make us stronger as human beings. And I know it's not easy, and we will journey together. I'm going to be here supporting you. I love you, but I'm not going to take away this barrier from you, I'm not going to remove the exam. I'm not going to take away the homework. I'm not going to take away the difficult assignment. I'm not going to, my job as a parent is not to remove all of these difficulties in life, because then I'm preventing you from actually living life, because this is part of life. And in fact, this part of life actually enriches you as a person. And it's not pleasant at that time, to experience this stress and worry, but this is important. And I think, having that kind of perspective certainly helps manage the stress level. So they still feel worried and stressed, but it doesn't overwhelm them when they've got this kind of Helen Keller perspective. All right. I think the other thing that I found very helpful to gain perspective is to go back to nature. The Japanese, of course, this is an example of, this is a photo of the cherry blossoms in, I think, Tokyo. And, the Japanese, that society is quite stressful. They go through a lot of anxiety, one of the highest stress levels in the world. But they certainly, I think one of their ways to mitigate or manage that is they go back to nature, right? So when the cherry blossoms come, very fleeting, just for a few days, right? They book all of these places, take it very seriously. They've got these picnics with their, sushi and their sake, and then they enjoy, right, this beautiful view of cherry blossoms. It's almost a reminder of not just the beauty of nature, but, the fleeting nature of nature, the fact that it comes and in a few days it's gone, but it's something to be appreciated. Now, in a sense, I think that's a really good example of mindfulness. It's not about, permanence. I want this forever, but it's about saying, look, the blossoms are here today, tomorrow they are gone. So today, how do I make space for myself, my heart, to actually enjoy it, grasp the moment, treasure the moment now. And so right now, I appreciate it. I'm blessed by this experience rather than worrying about tomorrow, next day, next week, next year. There's always enough things to worry about. But I think, part of this mindfulness experience is about grasping, what do I treasure today? That I'm alive today, and it's something that I'm blessed with. So nature is good to me. So whether it's, all of you have different favorites, whether it's going to the islands or whether it's, this is, my old haunt. My wife and I were in New Zealand. In fact, this was the lake where I actually proposed to my wife. This was Lake Te Kapo. Beautiful part of New Zealand. Everywhere you look in New Zealand, I think it's stress relief. You go out there. This is another of my favorite places in Queenstown. And, you go out there to the mountains. So whether it's mountains or icebergs or waterfalls, I think what nature does. And look, I'm not saying you need to travel around the world. It's not possible now anyway. But even, you go to Port Dickson, you go up to the mountains. You go 1 hour out of KL, you're already in nature. You go up to the mountains, and I think it's about seeing the largeness of the world. And when you're standing there, for example, by the ocean, and Malaysia has beautiful seas and oceans, it puts life back into perspective. It reminds you that the world is bigger than your office. The world is bigger than this problem you're facing. I guess for our children, the world is bigger than, your classroom, than this homework assignment, than this exam you're worried about, The world is bigger. Life is bigger than this one thing you're experiencing. And so, you know what? We do all have problems. I'm not saying problems don't exist. And certainly this is not a means of escapism. This is not about running away. And if you go to some seaside, all of your problems disappear when you come back. Of course, that's not going to happen. That's escapism. And I've never for one, promoted an escapist lifestyle. Because when you have an escapist lifestyle, you realize you keep escaping. At some point, your problems are going to come back. So if you take holidays to escape from your problems, then you're miserable the last day of your holidays. Have all of you experienced that kind of feeling when, you're so stressed out and you hate your life, your job, your work so much, and you go off on holiday and you're so happy the first couple of days. By the second last day, you're already falling into a state of depression. And that's sort of a bad sign. That's sort of a, that's not a healthy holiday to take. That is the second last day, you're getting more and more depressed. And then the last day, you're even more stressed out because, you're dreading coming back. And actually, that's the wrong way to take holidays. So to me, it's not about escaping. Because look, I know, the problem is there. I will face problems. Every day, every week, there are challenges that I have to go through. No issue, that's something that I've got to face. But nature doesn't help me escape. Nature puts it back into perspective. Nature reminds me that amidst the challenges and problems, and I know my life is not perfect. Nobody's life is perfect. Nobody's workplace is perfect. Nobody's school experience is perfect. Our children's childhood certainly is not perfect. they're going to go through road bumps. But amidst this imperfection, you've got this huge world that is out there. And it gives us a sense of space, that, my life is more than just one problem. And just because I've got this one problem in my life doesn't mean my whole life sucks. Doesn't mean, everything is sort of awful or bad. And so I think it's about getting that perspective back again and realizing that, life can still be beautiful and wonderful. I love this quote, by Alice Earle. She was an educator. I mean, the joke is many of my children and students think this comes from Kung Fu Panda, because this was actually quoted in Kung Fu Panda. But I said, no, Kung Fu Panda stole it from Alice Earle. This is actually an Alice Earle quote from, many years ago. So she says, make the most of today. Time waits for no man. Yesterday is history. Tomorrow is a mystery. Today is a gift. That's why it's called the present. And I love that quote, because that to me is the essence of mindfulness and contentment. It's the essence of this is a thinking habit, rather than always me worrying about tomorrow or worrying about the past. It's about me learning to treasure my present. And wherever I am, whether I'm in the middle of a meeting, whether I'm in the middle of a classroom, whether I'm in the middle of an exam, whether I'm with my friends, with my family, at home, alone, watching TV, doing homework, it's about grasping the moment to say, I'm alive, and I'm grateful that I'm alive today, and I'm grateful that I've got this opportunity to do what I'm doing right now. And I may not enjoy every moment of it, but I'm grateful to be alive, and today is a gift. I think a few other perspective exercises that are useful for your children if they are really stressed out and worried about something, to ask them, look, is this a big problem or small problem? You ask yourself, will you remember this problem in 3 years' time? And in most cases, I would say 99% of the time, the answer is no, because it's not something long-term. What are 3 things you're grateful for today? So this helps us, again, maintain perspective. If you think your life sucks, think about 3 things that you have. And I like this question: how can you make today special for you? Are there things you can do today that can make you happy, that can make today unique, make today a blessing for yourself and other people? All right. So these are all simple exercises you can do with even young children when they are feeling down, when they are having stress, overwhelmed by anxiety. All right. Key number four is building social support. So we say that we need people in our lives, right? You can't do it by yourself, and so there are 3 types of resource people we need, in our lives, whether you're children or adults. So one is, I think, the mentor or coach, somebody that can give us what I call expert support. So for your children, it may be their teacher, their tuition teacher, an older classmate that is, an older student in their school, a mentor, somebody they look up to, their older brother or sister, somebody that can help them with things like their studies, their homework, so issues that they're going through, and you've got somebody who is older and more experienced to actually help you with that, so you don't feel alone. So you're not stressing out about your studies because you've got somebody that can actually help you with this. I don't understand my math. I don't understand, I don't know how to write an essay. There's somebody there that you can go to and you don't feel so alone, right? I think number 2 is the confidant, which is more emotional support. So we should always encourage our children to have friends, all right? To whether it's, family, friends, somebody that they can build a deep level of trust to the point where they can then, they can share. They can share their feelings, their ideas, their thoughts with, and this is really important, so that they don't feel alone, they don't feel isolated, whenever they feel overwhelmed and stressed and lost. They know that there's somebody they can do. Now, ideally, of course, parents should be part of this group, but you have to understand this trust needs to be earned. You want to be a confidant, then you've got to be the kind of parent that is willing to be listening without judging them all the time. And each time they come to you with a problem, rather than just scolding them and shouting at them, you need to then earn that trust. They need to feel that you are a safe place, that they can talk to you and share with you, and not feel scared, all right? So that's the confident role. Funster is have fun, right? Now, by the way, parents can play all 3 roles, but I would say it's important that you also encourage your children to have other people in their life aside from you. I mean, they shouldn't just rely on both of you for everything. That's an unhealthy dependence. You want them to also have other friends and other mentors, right? But the funster is, now these are friends or mom and dad, that they can just have fun with, downtime, relax, not have to worry, weekend, let's just watch TV, go for a movie, play games together, board games, whatever it is, like you guys do, computer games, whatever it is. But I mean, this is where you do stuff together to distress, all right? So we say these are the 3 groups of people you need, and we can tell our children, look, do you have them in your life? If you don't, you need to look for them. They're not going to drop on your lap. So you need to, start asking yourself, who are these friends? Who are the mentors? Who are people that you want to spend more time with? And you need to, as a child or as a teenager, start developing these relationships because they're not going to happen by accident. Okay. Number 5, keep fit. I think this one I won't spend too much time because this one we know, it's just that we don't do. Right, so healthy body, healthy mind, so regular exercise, eating habits. It's funny. During this COVID-19 crisis, we talk a lot about, social distancing and, wearing masks and all that. But we're not talking enough about, physical health. And that's why, our last webinar with Columbia Asia Hospitals, we were so grateful to have those 2 doctors talk to us about, hey, in the end of the day, it's immunity, man, immune system. And part of it is basic things that we all have known all the while. It's drinking enough water, it's, eating healthily, having enough vitamins, balanced diet, having exercise, making sure you sleep 8-9 hours every day. These are basics. You don't do this, you are under a lot more danger of getting COVID than other people because your immune system is weak. So I think physical health, there's a relationship between this and stress, because when our physical health levels are lower, we tend to be more prone to stress. And certainly, I think our body suffers more than when we go through extreme stress. All right. Number 6, develop grit, perseverance. Means this never give up kind of spirit. And this is important, again, as a life habit if I want to manage stress better, right? Okay. And look, I always say to parents, look, this is a balancing act. I'm certainly not asking parents to be cruel to kids or to downplay difficulty they're going through. So it's always a model where you empathize with the kid and say, you know what, you're really worried about this, you're stressed about this, and that's completely natural. There's nothing wrong with being stressed, all right? And I want to support you, but it's not about, like I say, removing the stressor. That's not the solution. It's about, picking yourself up and learning to fight, learning to battle through. And I think, okay, the reason why I mentioned grit in relation to stress is this. One of the, I think, major stresses we human beings have as adults or as children is our fear of failure, right? So we are stressed in a situation like an exam because we are afraid to fail. What if I fail? What if I don't get the A? And of course, to some of our kids, they're so super competitive. To them, even what do you call it? Getting a B is like an F to them. It's ridiculous how competitive kids nowadays. Maybe it's our fault. We have set benchmarks that are so super high. So to kids, whether it's a musical recital, and they're so scared because what if I make a mistake? And everybody's going to laugh at me. I'm going to fail. I'm going to be a laughing stock. I'll never play the piano ever again. Or what if I, if I play sports, what if I lose? What if we lose? So this is almost like riding a bike kind of thing, when you first teach a kid to ride the bike, the fear is, I don't want to ride a bike without training wheels because I'm afraid I will fall. So my fear of falling, that's the stress. My stress and anxiety about falling prevents me from even trying. And that creates more and more stress. And so we say, look, using the bike analogy, learn to fall. After the first time you fall, you realize that, hey, it's not such a big deal, right? All of us fall. It's not that painful. You get back up on your bike again and you ride. And after the second time you fall, by the second, third time, you don't care already, because the kid, once they realize that, hey, look, falling down, I'm not afraid of falling, because, you fall, it's not the end of your bike riding career. Everybody falls. It's about getting up and trying again. And you realize that once they are able to overcome, in a sense, that fear, that hang up about failure, then their stress levels are a lot lower, right? Because a major part of that stressor is, I'm afraid of failing. And so I think when I talk about grit, it's not about saying you'll never fail. It's not about saying everything will always be all right. No. Life is not like that. It's about saying, look, you know what? Sometimes things may not work out. I think this is the angle we need to take with our children. Things may not always work out. You not always get what you want. Not all the results will come out the way you want it to. Not all the time will you get straight A's. Not all the time will, success come to me, because life is not one uninterrupted, ceremony of success after success. Nobody lives life like that. Look at all of these really successful, great people, men and women who have achieved great things in their life, leaders, scientists, athletes. All of these people, and none of them have gone through life without going through failure. But it's about getting back up again. And I think when you develop this sense of grit, which is, okay, look, I'm willing to stick with it, I don't give up, I'm willing to persevere, then stress levels actually are managed. They actually moderate. So tell stories. I think this is the most effective way of teaching children how to manage stress. Tell stories. Albert Einstein, didn't speak until he was 4. Teachers describe him as mentally slow, refused acceptance into his first school of choice. His first PhD was turned down, but he became Einstein. So the grit now of being able to get up and move forward amidst failure. Rodin, who, sculpted this very, very famous, sculpture, you go to in the middle of Paris, he's the legend there, right? He failed 3 times to get admitted into the School of Art. His family, unfortunately, were not very supportive. I hope none of us are like this, But he overcame all of that. Walt Disney was fired from his previous job at a newspaper for the lack of creativity before he actually built his Disney empire. Star Wars rejected 7 times by studios before George Lucas was able to get the funding. Henry Ford went bankrupt. 5 times. Most of us, we start, even one business and go bankrupt. I think most of us are already, sort of once bitten, twice shy. 5 times he went bankrupt and then still was able to build Ford Motors. That's amazing grit, and I love this. Michael Jordan, recently, of course, Michael Jordan was back in the spotlight, right? Because of the documentary, The Last Dance in Netflix. And I watched it. I'm a fan of Michael Jordan. And I like this quote, he talks about all of his failures. I've missed 9,000 shots in my career. I've lost 300 games, 26 times I was trusted with the game-winning shot I missed. I failed over and over and over again, and that's why I succeed. And I think, that's the kind of spirit we need in our children. Say, you know what, Papa and Mommy, it's okay to fail. We are not going to jump on you each time you make a mistake, because all of us make mistakes. And it's about learning from our mistakes. It's about getting up again. And I think if we've got this kind of attitude towards life, that, it's okay to try. And if we fail, we get back up. Failure is not the end of life. I think a lot of that unnecessary stress and anxiety we face, I think that sort of goes away. All right. Okay, now let's go to part 2. I know I'm running a bit late, but give me 15 more minutes and 20 more minutes, we'll finish part 2. Right. So we've done part 1, which is resilience strategy. So how do you build up resilience? Part 2, let's talk about responsive strategy. So I call this the 6D model. And responsive strategies basically allude to the fact that what if you're already stressed, like right now, if you or your children are going through a high level of stress, right? What do you do to actually manage that stress in real time, right? And so I've come up with a 6D model: detect, don't make things worse, deal with the emotions, determine source of stress, discern what's under your control, do something about it. So very simple 6D model, easy to remember. And it's step by step, and it goes in order. So it follows a logical sequence. So first, detect stress. Now, this is important, meaning we can't deal or manage stress unless we know we are getting stressed, right? And oftentimes, some of us are terrible at this. So we need to train our children to be a bit more sensitive to know when you're stressed. And we've said earlier, it's okay to feel stress. Don't hide it, right? You don't need to feel that you need to hide it from your parents, because your parents are not going to scold you because you're going through stress. And same thing with bosses. I've always said, bosses, don't go and penalize staff because they're stressed, because all of us are human beings, we show vulnerability, it's okay, right? Now, I've come up with a model called the MAPS model, right? So this is basically 4 areas of who we are that changes when our stress levels go from medium to high, okay? So when we have experienced extremely high levels of stress, then these 4 areas change. So mentally, we change. So our thinking ability is actually impacted by high stress levels. So the danger signs, are things like, we forget things, we start becoming very absent-minded, so normally we are not like that, but we become like that. We become less creative, we become less able to process information, remembering information. So this is the instance of where you're going to the exam hall and you've got a mental blank, you can't remember anything because suddenly your mind goes blank, and so, that mental function, you're not functioning at full capacity, and you're noticing it. So even as adults, this is something we notice. Emotionally, of course, we become more irritable. Little bit, we get, very irritable. We are easily angered. We're sort of fighting with everybody. Very emotional, very aroused. That kind of thing. So high level of emotions. Right? Physical. Now, to me, this is the easiest telltale sign, because certainly for myself, it's the physical telltale signs that tell me that I'm getting stressed. So some of us, we turn red, our ears, become hot, we have back aches, neck aches. That's why, all of this, sort of massage chairs, all of them sort of sell them as stress relief, which is not, exactly true, but I sort of get what they're getting at, which is, you've got a lot more muscle tension. When your high stress levels, some of us have stomach aches, indigestion, diarrhea, migraines, immune system is weakened, so you get sick more often. So, one of the things that early research in industrial psychology to look at stress, all they did was they looked at the number of times staff took MC. And they were already able to predicted how stressed that organization is just from the time people are sick. So physical signs, these are the signs. We get sick very easily. Insomnia, can't sleep at night, right? Okay, so these are telltale signs. And I'm just saying, all of us have different sort of telltale signs. So we all react differently to stress. I think the purpose of this MAPS model is, to sort of learn about yourself, be observant about what are the things that I feel change when I get stressed. And it's about training your children to be aware and say, look, when you get stressed, let's think, when the last time when you got stressed, what were some of the things that you noticed were different about your emotions, about, maybe your physical body, was there something else, something that changed, something that started to feel ache, socially, of course, when we get stressed, a lot of fights, that's the telltale sign, lots of conflict, because, we are highly emotional, very irritable, we're low patience. All right. So MEPS, I think, to me, is like an early detection sign, right? It's like those tsunami nets in the Pacific Indian Ocean. When a tsunami is coming, it gives you a warning ahead of time to say, hey, be aware, tsunami coming in. So to me, the MEPS model is for us to say, okay, I need to calm down. All right. I'm getting stressed. Right. And if we are not careful, sometimes it's too late, when we are not sensitive to our own emotions, we have already then done something that is destructive. We already sent out the email that we shouldn't have. We've already shouted at somebody. We've already sort of thrown the iPad against the wall and broken it because we're so angry or stressed. So I think the idea behind MAPS is to sort of detect this building of emotions and sort of learn when we need to calm down. All right. The second D is don't make things worse. So if we feel that, okay, you know what, I'm getting very stressed, my child is getting very stressed. Second thing is to say, okay, look, we need to calm down. So we need time to remove ourselves from the situation. Don't make any important decisions when you're high stress. Don't try to avoid any important meetings. Try to avoid writing emails or WhatsApp messages when you're incredibly stressed, because you're going to regret it. Because you're not in the right frame of mind, that something is going to happen, right? So I think it's really important that the second thing is don't do anything to make things worse, because I can tell you, it's a bit like quicksand, to use the analogy. They say when you step into quicksand, they say the worst thing you could do is struggle. Don't move around, especially your legs. You start to struggle, you're going to sink in faster. And I think that's the phenomena, when we get stressed. That's the thing, we should actually be calm, but we don't. We get stressed, we become hyper, right? We start doing a lot of things, we call a lot of meetings, we talk very fast, we make fast decisions, we shoot out emails left, right, center, And same thing with our kids as well, the same thing, we do mix ourselves very busy because we need to act, do something. But then we are like the bull in the china shop, isn't it? And then, 1 hour later, we've destroyed the whole shop, We've created more conflict. One problem I think my analogy is I say one problem now, we have created four problems very, very quickly. And you think back to the last time you were really, really stressed. You realize that that's the pattern. One problem becomes four problems, five problems, six problems. So what we want to do is don't struggle, right? Quicksand, remain calm. It's tough, but that's the important thing to do. Count to 10. Take yourself out, go to the restroom, calm down, deep breathing, meditate, go to your place of prayer, all right? Do whatever it is to calm yourself down before you return to that situation. So even in an exam, we tell students, if you're freaking out, going through a nervous break, just calm down, take 1 minute to just do deep breathing, close your eyes for a while, and then start the exam again. Don't rush, right? But just calm down before, don't simply just start, shooting question answers and all that. And you're not going to, you're going to make a lot of mistakes. Number 3, deal with the emotions. And I think stress, in a sense, the analogy is that it's a bit like a volcano that builds up, right, over time. So a lot of pressure builds up. And what happens is all of this magma, at some point, the pressure builds up and the volcano explodes. And I think the worst thing we can do is sort of try to close that volcano, right? So sometimes we think managing stress is about hiding it and pushing it deep under. It's like taking all the rubbish in your house and dumping it under one garbage bin. And, imagine if you don't empty your rubbish for 1 month, what happens? I mean, look, you can push it all you want down. You can pretend it's not there, but it's going to overflow. I mean, you need to empty the rubbish regularly. If not, it's going to overflow all over your house. And so this volcano, I mean, you can try to press it down or do whatever it is. I guarantee you it's going to explode. You may delay the inevitable. In fact, that's what some people do, right? They suppress their emotions. Suppress my stress. I'm not stressed. It's not there. I refuse to be stressed. Hide it, dig it deep. And then 1 year, after 5 years, 6 years, boom, the whole thing sort of explodes. Even worse than before. I mean, you've all heard stories like this, isn't it? I remember I think about 12 years back, I was reading the story about a teacher in Malacca and a principal actually who sort of, went berserk. Halfway through the staff meeting, started throwing potted plants at all of the teachers. I mean, the police ambulance had to be called. All of this staff started running away because this guy just had a nervous breakdown, right? And then when they interviewed him, and this is the thing that is a bit funny all the time, right? They interview all of the teachers, and everybody always, when there's an instance like this, you interview all of the co-workers and the friends, and all of them will say the same thing. Oh, this guy was usually very calm. He never ever lost his temper in 10 years. Never showed any stress, was never anxious. I mean, that's the reason why, I mean, all of this emotion is sort of suppressed inside, hidden, and then boom, like an atom bomb. One day it just kapow explodes. And some people, it doesn't explode outward. Even worse, it explodes inward. This is the people who get heart attacks, bypasses, high blood pressure because, inside the bomb is going off. So I think, look, I just want to say, when we say deal with the emotions, we're not saying hide it, suppress it, pretend it's not there. Just because you pretend it's not there doesn't mean it's not there. I mean, you can pretend that your rubbish is not emptied, but I mean, you pretend it's not there doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It's still going to be there. So you need to do something with these emotions. And here I want to talk about 4 different activities, all right, that I found very helpful, that are what I call a healthy outlet, right? So healthy outlets meaning these are ways to express, channel these stress, anxiety, these emotions that are building inside of you that don't hurt yourself and they don't hurt other people. All right, so that's what I define as a healthy outlet. They don't hurt yourself, they don't hurt other people, they're not destructive behavior. So there are 4 kinds of activities, and all of you need all 4, and you should teach your children all 4 as well. So from a young age, they can learn all 4. So number 1 are release activities. So this is almost physical release. So things like physical activities, running, jogging, swimming, badminton, So smashing the badminton shuttlecock is a good outlet, it's a good catharsis sometimes, Kicking the football in futsal, I mean, in a sense, nobody gets hurt, in a sense, going punching. Muay Thai is incredibly popular now, going to the gym and, punching and, exercising. This is a good release, right? It's physical release. And in a sense, it doesn't hurt anybody else. I mean, in a sense, I mean, these are all controlled activities, right? I mean, shouting, I know some people talk about like scream therapy. I remember, them taking us in New Zealand to like these big valleys where nobody is there, and they say just scream, right? Just shout and you feel better. But look, I mean, depends on where you are, right? I think the key thing is you shouldn't be screaming at people. So don't scream at your family or or your pets or customers or stuff. As long as you're not screaming at people, I think screaming into a pillow is fine. That's sort of harmless, right? But not screaming at people. But whatever it is, it's a release, right? It's an activity to release a lot of pent up emotions. So that's one. Activities that involve creativity, that's really popular. Some people, they find it therapeutic to draw, write, paint, sculpt, sing, play a musical instrument, write things, compose things, I mean, look, you talk about art. I mean, the best songs in the world, the best novels, the best poems in the world are written out of all of this stress and heartbreak, correct? All of these emotions are funneled into this creative expression, paintings, all of this emotion comes out, and nothing wrong with that. That's good. Healthy outlet, nobody gets hurt, and so the idea here is it's about a creative expression. So good thing, to get your child interested in different creative pursuits. It's not just, about drawing, it's about stress relief as well, right? And choose different things as a family. All of you can do things together. You can paint together. You can sing together. I mean, right? Or you can do different things, right? If you have got different interests. Number 3 is enjoyment activities. So I've always said, look, you need all of these, by the way, resource activities you should do regularly. It's not just like once a month when the volcano is about to explode. These are things you can do for a few minutes every day, every week, every weekend, so that regularly, in a sense, you are releasing these. Your emotions are not being collected and pent up, right? So we call this healthy outlets. So enjoyment is things you enjoy doing. Like, what do you really like doing? So one of the questions you should ask your children is, what is something new you like to try? A hobby, what do you really like doing? Really like doing? Honestly, you like doing. After you do it, now you feel better, you feel more relaxed, you feel happier, you feel, just calmer, happier, more at peace. So do those activities. And I think it's being honest with ourselves. A lot of times, I mean, we do hobbies because other people are doing them, right? So we sort of copy, okay, other families go to shopping malls, we also go to shopping malls, my friends play golf, we also play golf. But I mean, let's be honest, a lot of times, a lot of these things you may not particularly enjoy. And so to me, then that's not a resource activity. So resource activity is, these are things you really do it because you enjoy them. And I think all of us, everybody in the house, adults, the father, the mother, the children, everybody needs their own resource activities. So some people may just be listening to music, watching movies, taking walks in the park, playing with your pet cat or dog or goldfish, doing cooking, gardening, I mean, all of this stuff. Whatever it is, and of course you can do different things, variety of things, but I think it's about getting your child and giving them space to have these interests. So that's why as parents also, you cannot be so strict with timeline, it can't just be work, they work, wake up at 6, 8, poor kids wake up at 5 a.m, catch the bus, go to school, come back from school 3, 4, tuition, homework, and then bathe, and then, the moment they do something they enjoy, maybe they want to play computer games, maybe they want to chat with their friends, straight away we scold them, hey, what is it? Put it away, enough computers, go and sleep, So no balance, right? So no wonder then they're stressed out of their minds, because they have no outlet. And I think they need something. At the end of every day, I've always believed you need something to look forward to. So I mean, it shouldn't just be work, and then sleep. Start the cycle again, start the cycle. I mean, what kind of existence and childhood is that? And I believe in a childhood where children should have enough time to play. I mean, in all of our schools, Street KDU, Rails, Real Kids, CFL, I mean, all of our schools, the philosophy of our education group is, please, protect the childhood of our children. Don't take away. I mean, it's okay to work. It's homework, work, all that is fine. I mean, we get excellent results, but not at the cost of torturing our kids to the point where, they don't enjoy school, so much homework that they are snowed under. So I think school and parents, we need to work together to get a balance, right? And so anyway, so enjoyment. So at the end of each day, what does the child have to look forward to? Like, give them some space, for goodness sake, where they can enjoy doing something, whatever they want, as long as it's not illegal, destructive, bad, unaffordable, something that is sustainable, but give them time. Teenagers, they need their room, they need space. privacy to do their own thing, so that there's an outlet, there's some space for them to sort of just be with themselves and be with their friends. So I'm happy to give them that space. Listen to their music. And I may not appreciate their music, I may not appreciate their computer games, but it's not for me, you understand or not? It's their outlet. So I've got my own stuff, my wife has her own stuff. All of us, like I say, we've got our own spaces where we can then distress. And I think that's healthy, right, as a family. Okay. Now, the fourth one is the most interesting, which is control activities. So these are activities that give us a sense of control. I don't know how many of you, when you're stressed, you sort of do housework, right? So some people, I know, like, these are like, high-powered CEOs, board members, chairmen of companies who are basically, they tell the maid, okay, you go and take a break. I want to wash the dishes. I want to clean. I want to vacuum. I want to fold my own clothes. And I tell you why, right? I mean, this may sound very weird and strange, but it's not. It makes perfect sense psychologically. It's because, some of our stress comes from not being in control of things. Remember earlier on, I talked about being powerless. And the reality is, I think most of us, whether your children, your child or an adult, there are moments in life, a lot of moments where we feel powerless. We go to work and so many things are beyond our control. COVID-19, the world economy, this, that, customers, consumers, your bosses, So you come back from work, after 8 hours of not being able to control anything, and you feel so powerless, so helpless, that you want to do an activity that gives you control. This feeling of control, right? Perfectly natural. And so things like housework, you do the dishes. There are two elements there. Number one, you're in full control, right? You're the boss of doing the dishes. You decide, how you want to, how much soap you want to use, how much water. And the second element is you finish it in 15 minutes, you finish the task. So you've got that sense of satisfaction, And I think a lot of us are in jobs that, the projects never end. Basically, it's like, just one KPI after another. You just, you go for 5-6 years before you finish the project. So sometimes you need that. Cooking is another good example. That's why you notice how people, when they cook, they're so super protective of, hey, I'm cooking. Everybody get out of the kitchen, because I want to be the boss of this space. I want to have control. And so I would say these are all healthy, natural spaces, and even children need that. I mean, my children have started baking and cooking, and I think that's a great pursuit. Gardening, cooking, all of these things, I would say, are good, harmless control activities because they don't hurt anybody, But the important thing to note here is that there are also unhealthy control activities. So, for example, controlling other people is unhealthy. So what you should be doing is, controlling the cooking and the food. That one is no problem, but I mean, don't go and try to control the family members. Don't go and nag other people. And that sometimes you think about it, that's what we do, right? So we go to office, we get frustrated and stressed. We come back, we take it out on the family. So we now try to be the CEO of the whole family, right? And then it drives everybody nuts. Then you stress out everybody in the family, right? So I think we need to be very clear about our targets of control. It shouldn't be people. Our control should be, the food, cooking, housework, gardening, the aquarium and the fishes there. All of those are fine, right? You can play God and, sort of, in a sense, have full control over that small universe you create, but don't go and drive other people nuts, right? So these 4 resource activities and outlets, you can teach your children how to do all of these 4 things. And I would say practice them yourself as adults as well, right? Number 4, determine the source of the stress. Right? So the 4th D is, do you know what is causing the stress? And this is important because if you don't know what's causing the stress, you can't solve the problem. Now, I think this is the easiest step, but this is the hardest because most of the time our instinct is to run away, right? Our instinct is to bury ourselves in our work, to escape, right? And I want to make another point here, which is, when you talk to your children about what is stressing them out, don't assume that the first thing they say may be the real stressor. I mean, even with adults, often when I've done these workshops and I sit down and we're talking after the workshop and people come to talk to me one-to-one and they're sharing what is their stressor. Often I need to dig a bit deeper. Normally when I talk to working adults and I say, what is stressing you out? The first thing on their mind is always work one line. Everybody assumes it's work. It's my work, it's my job, it's my, performance targets, but then I dig a bit deeper. Usually, always, in most cases, it's usually something more personal that is more important. And that's the real stressor. It's usually, okay, look, I'm having a difficult relationship with my father. I suspect one of my relatives have got cancer. I suspect my husband is having an affair. All of these are actual reasons I've heard. In terms of, when you dig a bit deeper, the real worry that they have, the real stressor that they have, is actually something buried inside. And I think for children, it may be the same thing. And so they may talk about homework, I'm stressed about this or that. But dig a bit deeper, there may be other things more profound they're worried about. I talk to some children, some of them, they're worried about their parents' marriage that is falling apart. They're so worried their parents might get divorced. So that's their stressor. It's not the homework, it's not SPM, it's something bigger. They're worried about, growing up, some children, they're worried about the fact that, I'm already 16, 17, and soon I'm going to say goodbye to my family. I'm going to go off to university. I'm not going to have this network that I have. And so I think as parents, to me, it's about listening. It's about probing. It's about asking. It's about, and sometimes the child, the person themselves don't realize, so they themselves don't realize what is actually stressing them out. It takes them a while to sort of, slowly come to a realization. And I think as a parent, part of our role is to process that, to help them, okay, what is really worrying you, what is really, what is really troubling you, what is really bothering you, and let's think, so the practice of asking yourself, what is really causing the stress? Is it really the work, or is it something else? And that's important. Now, once we identify then what's causing the stress, number 5, all right, I'm coming to the end soon, discerning what is under your control and what is not. So, if in my previous workshops, that I talk a lot about this, having a strong internal locus of control. Go back and read the book, Who Moved My Cheese? I think this is really a good illustration of that. But it's about distinguishing. In any problem situation or challenging situation in your life, right? There are things under your control, things not under your control. Now, I think stress levels elevate when we keep focusing on things not under our control, and then we worry about it, we stress about it, so it's about, your COVID-19, what's going to happen, this is happening, the business, the government, the political situation, the world situation, the US elections, China, US trade war, so we're thinking about all these big things, and we're thinking, I can't impact any of this, but my work, my business is all affected by this. So, worry. But we say, look, of course, these are reality. I'm not saying it's not real, but it's about then shifting the focus to what are the things under my control. So I can't change COVID-19. I can't change whatever it is Donald Trump is doing with China. That's beyond my control. But what I can change is, okay, what is my business strategy? If there's a trade war with, between US and China, if currency drops, if all prices go up or down, or, recession happens, lockdown happens. Now, what am I able to do as a business leader, as a staff in my organization to shift things along? So student example is, look, you can't control when SPM is, you can't control what's coming out in the SPM exam paper. You can't control how they will mark the paper. You can control what's in your head when you actually walk into the exam hall. So how prepared you are is under your control. So focus on that, focus most of your time on how do I become more prepared, rather than worrying about, this exam, this problem, this situation. So I think that's one of the keys. You need to discern what is under and not under your control. And that leads us to step 6, which is do it. What is within your control, focus your actions on those. Take action. So I end with this, which is, this is problem solving skills. So once, you look at step 4, 5, and 6, and you can see that they go in a flow, right? So step 4, identify what is actually causing you this stress. Is it exams? Okay, fine. Then step 5, discern what is under, what is not under your control. Don't worry. Stop stressing about things not under your control, because it's not your responsibility. Focus on things that is within your responsibility and power. Number 6, take action. So what can you do to actually take action to focus on the problem to solve it? And problem solving skills may seem very mundane, but to me, this is one of the most powerful stress management tools. A lot of kids, they get stressed, they get worried, they get worked up about things because they feel very powerless. They feel that I can't do anything in this situation. Early on, like I said, my Zoom connection is gone, Wi-Fi is gone. So how do I do it? How do I reconnect? I don't know what to do. So they feel helpless. And rather than, okay, where are my parents? Where's mom and dad? Somebody needs to help me. It's about then mom and dad training you to, okay, look, next time you're in this situation, okay, what are the steps to actually fix Wi-Fi? What can you do to fix your Wi-Fi router? Can you do, broadband? Can you do, hotspots? So these are 4 or 5 things that Papa and Mommy are teaching you, that next time you find yourself in this situation, you can do A, B, or C. Now that's problem solving skills, you see. So what happens is that you're giving power back to the child. So rather than you solve the problem for the child, but my point is that's not solving the problem, but because the next time it happens, then the child will have still the same nervous breakdown, because the child still feels helpless. And even worse, if mom and dad are not around, then they really feel helpless, right? So I think that the solution to some of this stress is to say, look, let us teach you and coach you how to deal with these situations. So I teach you what you can do to solve the problem, so that you're no longer worried about the problem. You're no longer afraid of being in a situation like that, because you know when you're in that situation, there is something you can do. You're not powerless. You're not helpless. All right. So that's dealing with the root stressor. And with that, I sort of want to end. I'm so sorry that I've gone over by about 34 minutes. But it's been good sharing this with you. A lot of very interesting ideas and thoughts. I hope that some of this you will find useful. So just to summarize, we talked about 6 resilient strategies, how to build up strength and resilience, life habits like reflection and all of that. And now we've talked about 6 responsive strategies, so the 6 Ds. And together, these are things that can help your children manage stress better, help yourself manage stress better. But I want to end with one more point, which is, and for those of you who have attended any of my parenting webinars, which by the way you can find on our Facebook pages in Real Kids, Real Schools, 3KDU, and Cambridge English for Life, we've done webinars through this last 3 months lockdown period. And in every webinar, I always work in this point. I talk about the power of unconditional love. I talk about, the most important thing I think parents can do for any kind of problem, including stress management, is, don't forget to love your children. Love your kids. Your children feel more secure when they feel that you accept them, you love them unconditionally. Whatever happens, Papa and Mommy will always be there for you. Now, doesn't mean we're going to take away problems. We're not going to make life easier for you in a sense, because that's part of growing up. But you know that when you face these difficulties in life, you're not alone. Your parents are there with you. That's what it means to have parents, to have a family that loves you. We are there with you. We are journeying with you. And we are always there, we are always the shoulder to cry on, we are always there cheering you on. You always know that we want your happiness, and we are there for you, and not, regardless of what happens, whatever life does, and life can be very cruel and very difficult. That's the reality of the VUCA world. But when life is cruel, you know that there's always a place you can be, and we are always here, right? So with that, I want to thank you for joining us on this webinar this Saturday on helping your child manage stress during COVID-19. Now, I just want to thank again all of our partners who are helped us organize this. So Columbia Asia Hospitals, that have been working with us to help make our schools and centers safe as we've all reopened now. So the great news that all of our schools and kindergartens and centers have reopened. It's wonderful to have the kids back. I know our teachers have really missed them the last 3-4 months. So thank you, Columbia Asia, for partnering with us on this. Also, pitterpatter.com.my. They are a great resource website for all things parenting. They have got panels of writers from medical doctors as well as, psychologists and developmental psychologists. So great website. I've been partnered with them for many years now. And so thank you so much to our partners. And just a quick shout out, for all of you who are joining us for the first time. If you don't know about the Prestigion Group, I just wanted to share that, we are the organizers for these series of workshops and webinars. So we've got schools, so 3KDU School in Kota Damansara, and Real Schools. We've got 3 Real Schools. Now, all of our schools do both national and international curriculum, primary up to secondary. The 3 Real Schools are in Cheras, Shah Alam, and Johor Bahru. All right. And I'm going to come back to one new school we're opening up in Klang a bit later. Real Kids, we're actually the largest owner-operator kindergarten in the whole of Malaysia. We've got over 5,000 students, 37 centers, over 30 years now. All right. And I'm so proud of them. For second year in a row, they were just voted Parents' Choice Awards for Best Preschool best trilingual program. So, they are really the best in the country. I'm so proud of that team. Cambridge English for Life is the largest, English group of centers for English language enrichment. They're great. All levels from young kids all the way up. They've got partnerships with National Geographic for learning programs, and they are the largest English, like I say, center group of centers in Malaysia. Over 70 centers, and this year they're celebrating their 20th anniversary. So go and check all of us out. Like I say, we're an education group that has a passion for educating not just students, for parents. I mean, we always say this, we're organizing all of these webinars because we believe education is not just for our students, but it's for our staff, for our parents, for all of us. When we get educated, then we set a good example for our students. So really exciting things happening. I just want to end by saying the big news in our group is that we're just about to launch in November our new school in Klang. So Sri Kedu International School, Klang. It's a beautiful campus. I've just visited the campus. It looks exactly like this, So this is the campus photos. It's in Berkeley Development in downtown Klang. You must go and check it out, all right? Soon they will be open for visitors, I think next month. But it's a beautiful school, beautiful facilities. It's going to be the second Sri Kedu school in our country. And what is exciting about it is that it's going to be the first, first school in Southeast Asia for digital leaders, and what we mean by digital leadership is that it will prepare this next generation for whatever career they're going into. So it's not just about people in technology, it's anybody. So whether they are going to be doctors or lawyers or engineers or, performing artists or psychologists or scientists, it will give them a strong background in the fourth industrial revolution skills. And they've set aside a curriculum just under 3 hours every week for kids to do projects in technology, a fourth industrial revolution. And this stuff is amazing. This stuff, even our university students are not doing this stuff. So from data analytics to coding, programming, business management solutions, website design, movie making, AI, VR, AR, robotics, so really cool stuff. So do go and check out, Sri Kedu Klang, like I say, the first Southeast Asian school for digital leaders. Go check that out. And again, I want to thank all of you for joining us this afternoon. Have a wonderful time with your children. I hope it's going to be, not stress-free, but, stressless. All right, and thank you so much, everybody. Have a great weekend.